from Uptima. And you can see them here. So we're going to walk you through just a little bit about how we're going to spend the next hour. We're going to talk a little bit about the Salesforce point of view as it relates to this quote to cash or cart to cash. Really, it's about capturing revenue across all your customer facing channels. So we're going to tell you a little bit about some of the things we're seeing out in the marketplace. But then we're going to hear directly from CT Corporation a little bit about what they're doing in this area. With Dreamforce being remote this year, this was our attempt to get that customer to customer perspective around an important topic that many of you are thinking about. And then I mentioned the trail guide. So Uptima is going to talk a little bit about their everything to revenue framework and how that has really helped set the vision and the direction for CT Corp's project. And then what I'm super excited about this, because this is not customary to many of our customer and partner led webinars like this, but you're actually going to see a prototype that CT Corp did in conjunction with Uptima. And if everything goes according to plan, we'll have about 10 or 15 minutes at the end to take questions from the audience. Feel free to chat your questions in the chat window or the Q&A window all along, and we'll do our best to address those as we move through. So the big picture here is that many of the folks in the audience are already using a portion of Revenue Cloud's. Usually CPQ is one of the starting points with Salesforce. But that only captures one very important channel, typically your direct sellers and your direct distribution channel. And on occasion, you'll expose that to your partner channel. But we partnered with Forrester Research earlier this year to poll companies that have this B2B selling motion. And I think like many of the folks who are in the audience today, direct sales is only one channel, an important one, but many of you are selling through partners, distributors, and resellers. Many of you either through your organic products or through acquired products, maybe having a direct to the customer e-commerce storefront. What we're going to talk about today is the service channel. So yes, you've got direct sellers, but there's a lot of customer interactions that happen through the service center. And I think that's a big part of what you're going to hear from CT Corporation. And with that, I would like to introduce David Kedem from CT Corp. I think I probably botched your name there, David, but why don't you tell us a little bit about CT Corp, about Wolters Kluwer, and specifically kind of the drivers behind this really large initiative you're leading.
Great, thanks, Greg. Yeah, and name is right. So yeah, once again, Dave Kedem, Director of Business Capabilities at CT Corp. I'm based in the CT headquarters office in New York, but working from home as expected. So let me just talk a little bit about Wolters Kluwer. So Wolters Kluwer is an information services and software company serving professionals in health, tax and accounting, finance, risk and compliance, and legal sectors. And Wolters Kluwer is based in the Netherlands. We serve customers in over 180 countries, and we have almost 20,000 employees. And I'm going to talk today about CT Corporation. So CT Corporation is a division of Wolters Kluwer. It's in the governance, risk, and compliance business unit within Wolters Kluwer, and it's a leading service provider of legal entity management, corporate compliance, and due diligence. So what does that all mean when we talk about entity compliance services? It's really about providing services for our customers and their legal entities. And so we provide a full suite of entity lifecycle management services. And I'm going to explain a little bit about kind of what that means, and you'll see it come together in the demo later. But we really have kind of like two main sources of revenue. One is our transactional or what we call our on-demand services. So it's like formation filings and other types of compliance filings. So I'm forming a business in New Jersey and I'm filing my annual report and I'm setting up my registered agent with CT Corporation. That's what we call our on-demand transactions, where customers are calling in to our service centers and we're performing those transactions. We also have our managed services, where we provide services on kind of a recurring subscription basis. I already spoke about registered agent, which is something that originates on demand but is a recurring transaction. And those are, again, outsourced legal and managed services. So maybe you have to file 100 annual reports a year, you can outsource that to us. So that's kind of more of your traditional managed service contract. And I know on the slide, it says we've been around, we're 125 years old. Actually, next year will be 130. So, and I've been here 18 of those years. So I'll provide a little background about CT and kind of what we're doing right now. We're really looking to modernize our business and upgrade upgrade and optimize our tech stack. So we want to support our digital customer experience as well as enhanced workflow and automation. So if you look at our current state, like a lot of mature companies, we have kind of this patchwork of legacy systems, order management, entity management, billing, ERP, homegrown applications, customer portals. It's kind of this spider web of systems with a lot of integrations back and forth, supporting CT and all its divisions and brands. And it just makes it hard to adapt to customer needs. And so what we're really looking to do is upgrade and simplify that end-to-end architecture across, again, all of those customer portals, workflow systems, and back office applications. And that will kind of like set us up for the future. So back a few years ago, we did a system selection exercise where we just looked at our full inventory of capabilities and workflows. And a natural place to look was Salesforce, given our existing investment in Salesforce as our CRM, our sales, service, and marketing cloud. We've been a Salesforce customer for 20 years, believe it or not. And so we worked closely with our Salesforce solution engineers. We worked very closely with our partners at Optima and solution architects to kind of map out our core business scenarios and see, is it a fit? Could we leverage this product? Could we leverage Revenue Cloud, CPQ, and billing, and essentially collapse a lot of our existing systems into one? And that's the direction that we selected. And you can see the reason I talked about our on-demand business and our managed services business, you can see it come together kind of at the bottom, where those inbound transactions, they originate in Service Cloud, right? Because that's where we manage our inbound customer requests, and some of them are transactions, and some of them are inquiries and other requests. So we have this concept of those Service Cloud cases, but they result in those on-demand transactions, those document orders, those filing orders. So we could just go right into CPQ and build those as quotes, go through a fulfillment process, take them through to billing. And at the same time, we could have our managed services that are set up in the same way, so that a managed service may end up at the tail end of that transaction, like setting up a registered agent service, set up the initial year billing and the recurring billing. And we could also have a managed service come through a traditional sales lifecycle, right? That goes through the lead to opportunity, same thing, into quote, into CPQ, into billing. So that was really kind of the big reveal that we could kind of take everything that we do and push all our channels into CPQ and ultimately billing. So this is just like kind of a high level view of our, at least a piece of our future state architecture with, Salesforce really at the core. And again, just to restate it, our goal was to, improve our customer experience, enable this workflow automation, again, across all of our revenue channels, and really leverage additional components within Salesforce as a core enterprise application. So set up our products, our pricing, our quotes, our contract, do our billing, our payments, and layer that on top of our existing sales and service and marketing workflow. So why are we doing all this, right? So there's benefits kind of across the board. So I'm going to talk a little bit about internal users and customers, but you'll see there's kind of a lot of gray area between the two. So just from an internal perspective, if you look, by putting everything in one system, we really get that complete lead to cash. And again, when I say lead to cash, it's lead opportunity, it's Service Cloud case, but I get my everything to revenue lifecycle in a single system, which again is a really compelling thing for us, dealing again with multiple billing systems today. And as you would imagine, that just provides us a ton of flexibility. It enables us to adapt to business needs. We have simplified processes. We can answer customer inquiries quicker, with more accurate information, and we get that true customer and entity 360-degree view. We're not jumping back and forth between systems to do the work to serve our customers, and we have those integrated workflows. So from a customer perspective, the goal is that they would feel the benefit of those improvements that our internal users see and feel, and then from like a direct perspective, we're able to optimize our time to market to set up new products. We have simplified product catalog, pricing structure. We have enhanced support for product bundles that we weren't able to do before, and offer an improved set of billing options. So it's really just having that optimized process for quoting and contracting. The customers will see the benefit of that. So just on this last side, this is just kind of like to sum it all up, right? This is kind of like the Salesforce object view of the world, right? Where we're saying, hey, from a quoting perspective, everything starts with the customer. But again, it's either that opportunity that goes into the quote lifecycle, picking products, configuring the quote, going through approvals, sending it to the customer, they sign it, we go into contracting, billing, set up the recurring bill, set up automated renewals. So we have all of that covered. And then we also have Service Cloud cases, those inbound transactions coming in, and we're going to create quotes for those. And those are mostly one-time fees, but like I said, it's a combination of one-time and recurring. They'll go through a fulfillment process a little bit different than the managed services sales contracts. So we'll go through fulfillment to actually fulfill the filing, to actually perform it, retrieve our documents, and then same thing, we'll take it through ordering and contracting if there's a recurring charge, and through the billing process. So this is kind of the high level view, and it's everything that we're going to be doing going forward. We'll go through one of these channels. So with that said, I'll pass it over to Alex.
Thank you so much, Dave. And I just want to take a second to just shout out our appreciation for our long-term and long-standing relationship with Wolters Kluwer. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about Uptima and the evolution of our organization alongside of Salesforce and Wolters Kluwer. So we were founded back in the early 2000s. Both our co-founders, Boaz and Siggy. Boaz, who's joining us here today, you'll hear from him in a moment, who had participated as members of leadership teams, really focusing on IT and B2B transformations for product companies, whether that was high tech, manufacturing, med device, software services. Most of us who sit in the executive leadership team today at Uptima have somewhat similar backgrounds. So what that really means for us is we had to learn, if you think about the evolution of this ecosystem, we had to learn in that evolution through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, how hard it is to monetize and optimize revenue across all of the revenue channels. So if you think back to, Sales Cloud implementations of we would implement Sales Cloud paired with a quoting tool. And then separately on follow-up projects, we would integrate with an ERP for billing. And then, we might come back and do some enhancements, some patchworks of components to support other partner channels, revenue from services, et cetera. These projects really took forever and were quite painstaking. And I think that, we can agree that the outcomes were not always as expected. So we weren't finding ourselves in a situation where we're providing organizations and users with the analytics and visibility to performance and the improvement metrics that everyone was expecting from these investments. So each one of us at Uptima on the leadership team, we separately have been on our own journey, converging here together at Uptima as in our mission as consultants to make it easier to achieve these business outcomes. And so gladly for, the time that Uptima has come to play, the rest of us have come to play in the Salesforce space, Salesforce equally was on that same journey to consolidate on a single platform, to make that revenue lifecycle and that revenue journey a lot simpler from an implementation perspective, as well as ROI for our customers and our partners. So for the last 14 years, we have been fortunate enough to help more than 100 B2B organizations like Wolters Kluwer CT Corporation on their customer experience optimization journeys. And we've accumulated significant domain experience across revenue, service, commerce, legal operations. So again, just that converging of, kind of the serendipitous, perfect converging of functionality and minds. So, Uptima, we always say that installing software packages is a pretty simple thing to do, right? We can install a software package or a managed package into your Salesforce org in a couple of minutes. What we really pride ourselves on at Uptima is that we're a true end-to-end service provider to help our customers in all aspects of the customer experience transformation. So we really view these types of journeys as true transformations. And I think that that aligns really well with what CT Corp is doing, referencing as the CT transformation. So we've started this joint robust journey together. We started with the planning phase that included not only the advisory services that Uptima offers around future state architecture, as well as the program roadmap, but we also embarked on a pilot or a proof of concept, prototype, whatever you like to call it, for CT Corp stakeholders and user community to truly be able to grasp the proposed solution. So throughout that implementation, we put an emphasis on data migration, readiness, and robust integrations through MuleSoft. Our recommendation to any company who is considering a program is not to underestimate the necessary planning and advisory pre-project phase, as well as oversight of for the transformation leaders throughout the project. So in selecting a partner, make sure that these strong capabilities are in place, as well as providing these services across all products and clouds that are involved in that. So in CT Corp's case, it's not just Revenue Cloud, but it's also Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, MuleSoft, that has a proven track record of success in really partnering with their customers, as well as their vendors like Salesforce on these journeys. So with that, I will hand over to Boaz.
Thanks, Alex. What I want to do in a few minutes is just to walk you a little bit through what we call our everything to revenue framework. At the beginning of the webinar, Greg described the need that there is in the market to monetize across all the different revenue channels. And we're seeing this again and again, that companies, yes, they want to monetize their quoting with direct salespeople. But then on top of that, we're seeing more and more use cases where companies suddenly want to monetize a case where you start with an asset. So there is a medical device or there is a piece of equipment in the field that now generates invoices, right? Is it because the customers are using it and there is usage that is happening, or because there is a field technician that is coming to the field and providing service? And in the CT Corp case, we're saying that even though those people are not field salespeople, but either inside sales or service teams that are working directly on emails and calls that are coming from the customer, still there is revenue to be generated from those transactions. And then the next thing is, if you're using B2B commerce, then also for those transactions that are happening in B2B commerce, you would probably want to invoice and you want to make sure that everything is being consolidated under the same roof in Revenue Cloud. And you want to do this across all channels, right? So it's not just your direct people, it's partners of all kinds, it's distributors and agents, resellers. So that experience should be monetized as well. And to deep dive a little bit further, we took one use case here as an example. This is the asset to revenue. And as you can see through this infinity loop, we are tying those two capabilities together. So when I'm selling as either as an internal salesperson or as a field salesperson, when I'm selecting those products, when I'm pricing those products correctly, and those products are eventually get ordered and billed, this generates an asset on the field service side. And that asset needs to be installed, and it needs to be installed correctly. Revenue Cloud serves that purpose from that perspective, because the specific correct configuration will be available for me when I'm now using either field service or Asset 360 for asset management. Now I'm starting to use it. Potentially there will be some service that is happening with a field service technician that is coming and so on, and certain changes can happen, right? So I started with one configuration, but through the repair process by the technician, I actually exchanged some parts, maybe installed a different piece of software. That maintenance needs to now feed back into Revenue Cloud. Because the next time that I'm either renewing or amending the software, or maybe I'm buying some consumables or accessories, I want to make sure that I'm doing this with the compatible configuration, and that configuration definitely changed in the field. So we're bringing all those products together based on 14 years of implementing those products separately and jointly. By the way, maybe even using DocuSign for CLM capabilities and for doc generation capabilities, either on the invoice side, or if I'm creating a service report that needs to go to the customer, that can be created as well. So for every one of those use cases, what we're doing is we're building those best practices and capabilities alongside with a reference architecture. So both our consultants as well as our customers are not in a need to reinvent the wheel. They can start from something that is proven and has been working in the field. And just before I give it to Josh to describe the use case specifically for CT Corp and to demo it, one of the things that is really a true enabler for that concept of everything to revenue is that within one of the latest release of Revenue Cloud, you can now use Salesforce Billing separately, right? So of course, you can still go with the standard use case of starting with a quote, going through the product and pricing exercise, and then take it into billing. But billing can also act as a multi-cloud hub for everything that is happening from a billing perspective. And you can start it from field service, you can start it from B2B commerce, and you can even start it from an external system. So that innovation by Salesforce is a fantastic enabler for us to go and really allow customers to use those capabilities across all revenue channels. Josh, I'll hand it to you to maybe give a little bit of description of what we're doing specifically with CT Corporation, as Dave described before, and maybe with a little bit more functionality details for all the functional and technical people on the line, and then we can demo that process.
Sure. Thank you, Boz. Okay, well, hello, everybody. This is Josh, leading the architecture, one of the lead architects on the program anyway. The everything to revenue portrays itself in CT Corp in many fashions. And Boz mentioned it, but I must say, when Salesforce came out with the multi-cloud billing, even I was a little surprised and wondering where it fit in, but starting to use it, this opens up so many different use cases that we can do. And I'll demonstrate one of them in a minute. But if multi-cloud billing allows us to create an order and bill for it from any system, Salesforce or otherwise, there's no reason why Salesforce itself, outside of the standard opportunity in quote, wouldn't work as well. So any use case that you want to fit into here that doesn't follow the standard run-of-the-mill opportunity quote order is now applicable. You can do it, and pretty simply as well. And this is one of the things that we're leveraging, and we'll show part of that today. What you're seeing here is there are multiple entry points that support the everything to revenue. You'll see the service team, you'll see the sales team, you'll see partner sales, you'll see customer self-service. All of those are leveraging the back-end CPQ, okay, which all end up in that big orange circle in the middle, order creation. Okay. At some point, this goes out to fulfillment. I'll talk about that as well. And then, of course, down to the ordering, contracting, invoicing, collection, and over to ERP. I'll try to show you as much as I can in the time we have. I've simulated a few things because some things rely on integration. But sure, if you have questions, feel free. So I'll dive right into the demo so that we can take a look at it. Okay. Here we go. Get this out of the way. Super. So as I said, we're starting from a case. Again, not the standard run-of-the-mill place you would start a quote from. So right here, I have a case that the CT Corp uses for many things. A customer can call up requesting service. They can use email to case to create a case. And from this case, okay, we can create a quote. Okay, pulling everything into the quote that is necessary, and remembering that this also connects back to billing. Okay? What the user is first presented with is a bunch of preferences. Some of these preferences are ordering preferences. Some of these preferences are billing preferences. Okay, these get pulled in either from the contact or from the account with some sort of hierarchical logic in between them. Change them here is fine. It just changes them transactionally for this quote. So it's displaying it here. If specifically the user doesn't want to get notified for this one, then I'll take it off, but their preference was to actually receive it. So create the quote and we'll dive right into it. Okay, so we're in a quote. There's nothing a user needs to do here. He can go straight into the quote and configure his quote. And one of the things we're actually leveraging, I think, every nook and cranny, both in Salesforce and in CPQ, all the rules engines, all the capabilities, all the automations in CPQ, we're actually using all of them. In addition, we're very heavily relying on Lightning components, okay, which is the future of Salesforce for development. So any of you that have worked and used Salesforce and used the old Visual Force screens, no longer using those. And I'll show you one example here. So if you look at my screen now, you'll see these two buttons here, the Advanced Entity Search and then New Target Entity. Entity is a basic component at CT. So any order that you have, any line you have has to be linked to a specific entity, which is a characteristic of a customer. So both of these are going to pull up custom screens. Okay, and we'll see what we're doing from there. So very heavily leaning on Lightning components. So I've already pre-created us an entity that we can use for today, and mostly in the interest of time. What this screen is going to pull up for us is very similar to a list view. Okay, they're going to have lots and lots of entities in their system and need an easy way to search for them. This screen gives that capability. You'll see that we defaulted this to the account on the quote, just so that it's easier, because most likely you are quoting for an entity of this account. If you need additional parameters, of course, we can add as many as we want. Okay, get the advanced logic down here with the and the or, very should be familiar with. Okay, in this case, we don't actually need it. We've also got a keyword search, so we can search the entire database. Okay, in this case, I only want my Salesforce demo entity #1. A couple different options in here. Right now, we're going to use the create group function. So what I did is I created a group that we'll see in a moment. And it leaves me on the page, because what this allows me to do is create all the groups at once and then go out and quote for them. So if I wanted to add another group, I could do that. So I would add all the different groups that I want here, and only then go back to my cart. So this component not only allowed me to do the search, but when I did the save, okay, it also created the group. It renamed the group to the name of the entity. And I did expose a few things here for you to see that users don't see this. It takes that entity and physically links it to the quote, to the group. Same thing, the entity exists in a specific jurisdiction. In this case, it's Colorado, and that entity has an entity type. Okay, now the combination of jurisdiction and entity type, I'll stop here just for a second to explain. The price and also the name of the product is derived by the combination of what type of entity I'm quoting for and where I'm quoting for. So different jurisdictions, you're basically providing the same service, but with a different name for different entity types. And as you'll see, also provides a different price. Okay. In a standard ERP, this leads to having different SKUs for each of them. So if I've got 20 entity types and 50 jurisdictions, that's 1,000 SKUs for every service. Okay, so we now have 200 products, which are the equivalent of about 200,000 SKUs in the old catalog. So we're defaulting these, and I'll show you how we're using those in a minute. So now that I have my group set up, I can go and I'm going to add 2 products here. I'm going to incorporate, and I'm going to qualify. So 2 different services that we use. Okay, one of them is setting up corporation. The other one is qualifying in a different state. Now, what it did here with the defaulting, okay, the second we've added them to the group, it automatically adds them to the configuration attributes as well. So the user doesn't have to do this anymore either. Okay, so this saves him all this amount of work. I'm going to save this. Then I'm going to add my second product here. Just a second. Okay, I've got all these additional options that are coming through. I'm also going to qualify this in Delaware. Okay, the one change that you'll see here is the state province is not populated because the state province for a qualification is not the same as where I'm qualified, as where I'm incorporated. So for this case, I'm going to choose Delaware. These are bundles. Of course, there are additional options that can be selected. There are expedite options. So I mentioned the rules engines. Okay, so you'll see that specifically for the combination of a LLC in Delaware, only part of these expedite options are relevant. So you'll see how these ones are grayed out. Hopefully this is coming through on your screen. Not available, can't click it. Okay, is available, obviously I can't click it. Okay, but I'm going to skip expedite for today. And what we'll see here when we get back in is those 200,000 price points, they're all covered here. And not only are the price points covered, but also the actual name. So if you look at the item description, okay, the generic product is incorporation formation. But as I said, in every state, this is called something different. So it's pulling out the actual, excuse me, actual item description in here. This is what's going to show up on all the documentation. This is what's going to show up on the invoice. So with one product, I'm maintaining thousands of price points throughout thousands of product names without having to manage thousands of SKUs. Okay, moving along though. We'll save this. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm skipping over approvals, but this would now be submitted for approval using advanced approvals. You do that, just gonna manually approve this, which of course users can't do. Now, from a user perspective, they have one more thing they need to do, which is submit to fulfillment, okay, which is done in an external system. So when they click on this, okay, they get the option to submit to fulfillment, and they can submit one line. I had two bundles. They could submit both lines. Again, leveraging Lightning Web Components, we can format this any way we want. We can put any controls we want on here, but this is just wonderful to use, and we're leveraging a lot. But from an automation standpoint, this is what is really beautiful that we built here. The second the user submits this to fulfillment, he's basically done. Okay, so I'll, excuse me, I'll submit this. This kicks off an integration. It submits this to the fulfillment system. And unless you do something or there's a problem that arises, the service rep never has to touch this quote again. It'll automatically order, it'll automatically contract, it'll automatically invoice. Okay, having said that, okay, we did put in a few extra controls. So if we don't want that to happen, the user can hold the ordering. Okay, if we want it to order, but we don't want it to bill, we can hold the billing. So we did put in controls to let the user stop it, put in some stop gaps on the way. We don't have to. Okay, so speeding ahead a little bit, these would get submitted over to fulfillment. I've pre-created a mirror quote, okay, that's already been submitted and supposedly fulfilled. So this is the exact same configuration. As you see, each line comes back and eventually gets fulfilled and resolved, completed. Okay, I left one in here just so we could see the automation. So eventually these would get changed by integration from that third-party system. And once the last line gets resolved, completed, that's when this quote line automatically orders itself. So I'm going to do that. So this is this last line here. Change this to resolve completed. Assuming this would happen through integration. Okay, if I go back up to my quote, there it is, there's my order. So it automatically ordered. Okay, as I said, as soon as all lines have been fulfilled, it automatically orders. Now, if I wait 10 minutes, it'll automatically activate. So we're not going to wait 10 minutes in the interest of time. And if I wait a few more minutes later, then it will auto contract as well. So again, in the interest of time, I'm just going to do both of those. Now, Dave mentioned this a little bit when he was talking about it. So they've got one-time products, they've got subscription products, but they've also got evergreen subscription products, which are an interesting little animal themselves. So just for those of you who don't know what an evergreen subscription is, an evergreen subscription is a subscription that doesn't need to be renewed. Okay, as long as you don't tell it otherwise, it'll continue to go. So think of your Netflix subscription, your Amazon Prime subscription. Okay, any of those are evergreen. So the second you sign up for Netflix, every single month you're going to get a bill until you actively call Netflix and tell them, hey, stop billing me. I don't want to be a customer. So this is going to do the same thing. There's no need for a renewal process. Okay, there's no need for any of that to happen. When the renewal date comes up, it'll just go in automatically bill you again and again and again, as I said, until you stop. So I've now activated and contracted this order. Okay, on this order, actually, I had 2 of those evergreen subscriptions. So the one we're looking for is representation. Okay, I've got it twice, one for each of the bundles. What I'm going to do now is more or less the last phase. Okay, is we're going to invoice. So there is an automatic process that runs, and we'll pick this up. Again, we're not going to wait for the automatic process. We've added a capability up here for the user to invoice right now. So I'll click it on here. It'll go and it will generate an invoice for this order. And I'm actually going to do this process twice, and I'll show you why. Okay, done this. Okay, let's go take a look at my invoice. Okay, so my invoice, okay, now includes all of those lines that I just had. Okay, so click on this actually. Everything that was on that order was now invoiced. And this is a mixture of one-time and those evergreen subscriptions. So representation, okay, with a period covered, full year for that $339. Okay, now since we did this manually, I'm gonna have to post this manually as well, so I'll just do that. Again, assuming this would be picked up by the scheduler, it would automatically be posted. Wonderful. Now back to my order. Okay, so if I now look at specifically at the order products that are the evergreen ones. Okay, this is the record that's going to keep on billing until you tell it to stop. So I can see that I've total billed amount is now $339. Okay, and my next billing date is going to be a year from today. So assuming I don't terminate this subscription, it'll automatically just bill. There's nothing anybody else needs to do. The system will do that automatically. So I said I was going to do this twice, so I'm going to do this twice. Meaning I'm going to go back to the order and I can bill now again. So assuming it's a year later, this gets picked up by their invoice scheduler again. Okay, done with that. And if I look at my 2 invoices, so I have one order, I've got 2 invoices, but if you look at the total, one was $2,793, which is the entire order. The second is $678, which is 339 times 2. So if I take a look at my second invoice, the only thing you're going to see on that second invoice are those 2 evergreen subscriptions. That. Okay, billing again for 2022 to 2023 for the $339. Okay, and if I post this one again, okay, and then I go back to my order product, okay, we'll see that get reflected on the order product. So on the order product, okay, now my total amount has accumulated for 339 for 2 years. That's 678. Of course, I've got another line like this with another 678. My next billing date isn't until July of 2023. Okay, and I can keep doing this on and on and on until this gets terminated. Once it gets terminated, obviously it stops, but this would go on, and this is the magic that we're able to do with the billing, with a single order, and it's taking care of revenue forever.
Perfect.
Last thing to show you in the background, again, I pre-did this. We've got an invoice PDF that automatically gets created. Okay, very flexible tool. Create any invoice that you want. Okay, we did a couple interesting things here, including the scan line down at the bottom. Okay, which requires a special font to be added. Terms and conditions, dynamic information, etc.
Very good. So, Josh, thank you very much for this. This is fantastic. I think one of the key takeaways from this is, number one, we started from a case. We didn't start from a quote. And the process itself is serving an inside sales function, right? So all those functions that many companies would think that are doable just on a back office system, such as ERP. In CT Corp case, it's Oracle or JD Edwards. These functions can now come to the front office. You can have everything happen in the user experience of Salesforce. That's number one, which is in many cases superior to most of ERP systems. But then on top of that, everything is being consolidated under one roof. And those invoices that started from an opportunity and those invoices that started from inside sales or service are all under the customer, serving the 360 for the customer, and allowing you to take bigger portion of the process, like Josh demonstrated, and have it done much quicker. So in terms of reducing the cycle time that it takes from the time that you're quoting to the time that you're invoicing, it's now done within minutes, right? So there were many steps, but if you compare it to what most organizations are seeing for processes as such, usually it takes days. And the reason why it takes days is because it needs to go from one station to another person, to another person. It cannot happen in one system. So hopefully we've been able to deliver that message. And I think we're right on time, Greg, for potentially some questions for the next 10 minutes.
Absolutely. So the first question for those who didn't see was, what is the invoice generation tool being used here? And I think Josh answered it in the chat. But Josh, that's a DocuSign invoice generation. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Excellent. Awesome. Yeah. Another question. This one's for you, Dave. And I know a big part of the business justification and the evaluation was showing the benefit or articulating the benefit of having both inside sales or the service center going case to invoice, case to order. How did you guys articulate, or how did you quantify the value of having your direct quote business that your selling team was doing, and then these more transactional orders that your service center was taking?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I mean, I think it's a lot of it is around just kind of internal, efficiency. Again, I think the customers do feel the benefit, but in today's world where we have requests coming into cases, and then that particular case requires an order to be placed, I mean, the service rep has to go to another system. There's kind of like a little integration, but ultimately it's the swivel chair thing. They have to go to another system. They have to manage it. They have to sync it up, keep it in sync. And essentially they're always managing multiple things. They're saying, the case has a life cycle, but that life cycle is a function of that order, and that order has a life cycle. And now you're managing these two things, whereas in the future state, it really all ends up becoming one thing. So that's really the kind of the efficiency benefit of being able to have everything in one system from a order build perspective, and then not to mention the fact that then the invoices are there and then the payments are there, whereas in today's world, again, I can get a billing inquiry and I might have to go to 2 or 3 different systems to see what's going on, whereas in the future I could just click a link from the case to the quote to the order to the invoice, and I can see everything in one place. So all of those scenarios speak to the internal efficiency that we expect to gain by having it all together.
Awesome. This next one might be a question for the Uptima team, but in this kind of in this phase of the project, where is payment and payment application going to be done?
Josh, can you answer this one?
Yes. So that's a great question. As I understand it right now, it's going to be in Salesforce. There are a couple of facets to it. Some of it is coming from clearinghouses, but the online payment is definitely going to be recorded in Salesforce.
Yeah, and I think that question may stem from coexisting with financial systems. A lot of times we'll see Salesforce take it all the way up till the invoice, and then the invoice will pass it to accounts receivable and ERP, and that becomes the system of record for the actual invoice and payment application and all the GL transactions. But there is some flexibility, but it sounds like this payment method, that there's some greenfield there to accept more payments coming through Salesforce. So very cool. Any other, I'll encourage anybody in the audience who has a question for Salesforce, for Uptima, or for Dave from CT Corp, either use the chat or the Q&A feature. I think we even have the raise hand button going. I think we might have a fairly shy audience today.
We do have another question.
Awesome.
Do all orders that you generate start with an opportunity and a quote regardless of where it comes from?
I mean, I can take that. It's from a sales perspective, they'll start with an opportunity and a quote, but from a service perspective, we will not have an opportunity, right? Because again, in that transactional service business, it's not really applicable, right? It's kind of a closed opportunity at the time that we receive the order. You know, like our customers, they know what they want, they place the order with us. So those won't have. So not everything will have an opportunity, but everything will have a quote.
Yep. And the consideration whether to start with a quote or directly to an order is if products need to be selected and configured and priced, and you want to have the case go into a quote. But for some use cases where products and pricing is already figured out, and we talked about the multi-cloud billing, you can direct it directly into an order and have the process completely touchless. So no one needs to configure, no one needs to price, which is not what we've demonstrated, but that use case is supported as well.
And I'll add one more thing, Buzz. One of the major changes that Salesforce made, and we were so thankful for this, to enable multi-cloud billing is you don't need the opportunity anymore. So in the past, even if you wanted to do and enter orders from somewhere else and try to bypass the system, you still need to enter a dummy opportunity. Okay, that no longer necessary. So if I just share my screen for just one more second here, and I rushed over this in the interest of time. This was my original quote. Okay, you'll see there is an opportunity lookup here, but it is blank. Okay, we are not creating an opportunity here.
Yeah, I think for these higher velocity service inquiries and high velocity inside sales transactions, that was a big driver for that the opportunity management process oftentimes gets bloated over years of using Sales Cloud, and then these high velocity routes to market come into play, and it's just an extra step for folks who are trying to wrap up and get to the next one. So
Dave, one thing I think might be interesting for you to share just some insight on CT Corp's readiness into this program, you know, just given its size and the speed at which you got started, just from a program methodology, program architecture perspective. I can tell you that you are absolutely one of the most organized organizations we have ever worked with. It makes the relationship very easy on an ongoing basis. And I think it would be really interesting for some of the folks here just to hear how CT Corp got ready and the way that you got ready and came to the table quite quickly to kick off.
Thank you, Alex, and I appreciate that, and likewise, it's been great working with both Salesforce and Uptima, and really that ends up answering your question. It's like recognizing kind of the challenge before us, right? To kind of, we're going to redo everything, right? Redo our portals, redo our internal systems, right? There's just so much going on there And I think that we were pretty methodical in terms of like really doing the system evaluation. Like I said, we started off relatively, slowly, I guess, with Salesforce solution engineers and spending time together, like mapping out all of our, existing workflows and then saying like, how does this work in Salesforce? And
Mhm.
even with that, then we did, obviously the engagement with you guys, to kind of take that to the next level.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, to me, it's like the software development methodology. It's like, you just have to iterate, and then you keep iterating until you develop that comfort level. And that's essentially what we did. And I think that kind of like brought us the time, and we learned a lot. So now that we're actually implementing everything that Josh showed you, it's like a lot of this stuff, this is actually the second version of it. And a lot of those conversations like we had, so we were able to expedite the process. So I would just, encourage people to do that. I mean, it's very tempting to kind of like dive right in, but sometimes details matter, and you got to dive into like the really specific use cases and say, does that work? Because it wasn't a natural fit. The first time I asked the question, could we use CPQ for our on-demand? A couple of years ago, the answer was like, it wasn't. I don't know. It's not a great fit. So it took a little time.
No, that's fantastic. And if you had just a tidbit of wisdom to offer others in your shoes, lessons learned up to this point, what do you think would be one of the biggest little, or the smallest or the biggest little gems you might be able to share?
That's a tough one. So basically, I mean, I would just say that again, and I'm going to use the size of this project as kind of like an example. It's like but whether it's a large initiative or small, anytime you're doing something like this, they'll require a lot of change, and just a lot of, again, detail oriented work. It's just, I can't emphasize the importance enough of planning and doing the analysis. And yeah, I know we all want to go in and build and configure, but there's a lot of work to do up front first. And I think if you take the time to do that work, it really pays dividends when you actually start your project.
Yeah, and I can tell you for sure the Uptima team feels that preparedness in the design and delivery hub. So I think you guys have done a great job.
Thanks.
Good.
Awesome. Well, I think that concludes the program today. I want to thank everybody for joining, and I especially want to thank David for sharing your journey so far and the vision you've got for enabling multi-channel revenue at CT Corp. I know our customers appreciate it who are on the call. Josh, thanks for the demo. Boaz and Alex,
Yes, thank
appreciate
you.
your leadership here, and thanks everyone.
Yep, likewise. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining.